Sarah Martinez stared at the legal documents spread across her mahogany desk, the words blurring together after another 18-hour day at the firm. At 32, she was the youngest partner at Whitman and Associates, but success felt hollow when measured against the dark circles under her eyes and the way her 8-year-old daughter Emma barely looked up from her tablet anymore when Sarah came home late. The brass nameplate reading Sarah Martinez-esque caught the fluorescent light, and for a moment, she didn't recognize the woman she'd become. When had she stopped being the adventurous girl who dreamed of traveling the world and started being this corporate robot who lived on coffee and billable hours? The intercom buzzed. "Miss Martinez? There's a gentleman here from Nevada. Says it's about an inheritance?" Sarah frowned. She had no family in Nevada, no family anywhere really. Her mother had died when she was 16, and she'd never known her father. "Send him in." The man who entered wore a weathered leather jacket over jeans and boots, his silver hair pulled back in a ponytail. Everything about him screamed motorcycle, from the road-worn Harley-Davidson t-shirt to the way he moved with casual confidence. "Miss Martinez? I'm Jake Morrison, attorney for the late Thomas Tank Rodriguez." He set a manila envelope on her desk. "I'm sorry to inform you that your father passed away 3 weeks ago." Sarah's world tilted. "My father? There must be some mistake. My father left your mother when she was pregnant." "Yeah." Jake's weathered face softened. "Tank spent 30 years looking for you both. Found out your mother passed, but you'd changed your name, moved around. Took him this long to track you down." The envelope felt heavy in Sarah's hands. Inside were photographs of a man with her dark eyes and stubborn chin, arms around various motorcycles, legal documents, and a deed to property in Copper Ridge, Nevada. "He left you Rodriguez Cycles motorcycle repair shop and garage. Sits on about 2 acres just outside town." Jake pulled out business cards. "I've got a property manager, a lawyer out there, accountant. Everything's been maintained, but, Jake's expression grew complicated. "Copper Ridge is a small town. Your father was. Well, he was important there. People are going to have expectations." That night, Sarah sat in Emma's bedroom, watching her daughter sleep. Emma had Tank's nose, Sarah realized, studying the photographs. Her father's nose, the grandfather she'd never known existed. "Mommy?" Emma's sleepy voice broke the silence. "Why are you crying?" Sarah wiped her cheeks. "Just thinking, baby. How would you feel about a road trip?" 2 weeks later, Sarah loaded their SUV with suitcases and Emma's tablet collection, officially taking her first vacation in 3 years. The drive from Los Angeles to Copper Ridge took them through desert landscapes that seemed to stretch forever, so different from the concrete jungle they were used to. "Are we really going to sell the motorcycle place?" Emma asked from the back seat, looking up from her tablet for the first time in hours. "That's the plan." Sarah adjusted her rearview mirror. "We'll see what it's worth, meet with the property manager, and be back home in a few days." But as they crested a hill and saw Copper Ridge spread out below them, a small town nestled between red rocks and endless skies, Sarah felt something shift in her chest. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in months, she could actually breathe. Rodriguez Cycles sat on the main road leading into town, a low building with bay doors and a hand-painted sign that had seen better days. Several motorcycles sat in the parking lot, chrome gleaming. Sarah pulled up next to a massive Harley, feeling like her compact SUV was a toy in comparison. The front door chimed as they entered. The shop smelled of motor oil and leather, with classic rock playing softly from speakers mounted in the corners. Motorcycle parts and tools filled shelves along the walls, and several bikes in various states of repair occupied the work bays. "You must be Sarah." The voice made her freeze. Deep, familiar, sending shivers down her spine, despite 16 years and all the carefully constructed walls around her heart. She turned slowly, and there he was, Marcus Chen. The boy who'd been her everything at 16, who'd vanished without explanation the night of graduation, leaving her broken-hearted and pregnant, though she hadn't known it then. He'd filled out, shoulders broader under a black t-shirt, arms more muscled from years of physical work. His black hair was shorter now, but those dark eyes were exactly the same, intense, intelligent, seeing right through her defenses. "Hello, Sarah." His voice was carefully neutral, but she caught the slight tremor. "Welcome home." "This isn't my home." The words came out sharper than intended. "And you, what are you doing here?" "I've been running the shop for Tank the past 5 years." Marcus glanced at Emma, who was staring wide-eyed at a vintage Harley. "That your daughter?" Sarah instinctively moved closer to Emma. "Yes, Emma. Stay close to me." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, hurt, maybe, or resignation. Tank talked about you all the time. He was proud of you, becoming a lawyer and all. He didn't know me. Sarah crossed her arms. And apparently neither did I know him. Or you, for that matter. The air between them crackled with 16 years of unspoken words, hurt and anger. Emma looked back and forth between them, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. Mommy, are you okay? Sarah forced a smile. I'm fine, baby. This is an old friend, Marcus. This is Emma. Marcus crouched down to Emma's level. Nice to meet you, Emma. Want to see something cool? Before Sarah could object, he was leading Emma to a vintage bike, explaining the engine in terms an 8-year-old could understand. Watching him with her daughter, patient, gentle, genuinely interested, made Sarah's chest tight with emotions she'd buried long ago. This was supposed to be simple. Sell the shop, go home, get back to real life. But nothing about Marcus Chen had ever been simple. Sarah barely slept that first night at the Desert Rose Motel. Emma curled against her side in the double bed. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus the way he'd looked at Emma with such careful tenderness. The way his hands had moved over motorcycle parts with the same confidence he'd once used to trace her skin. She'd been 17 when she realized she was pregnant, 2 months after Marcus disappeared. Too proud to track him down, too hurt to try. She'd raised Emma alone, built a career alone, convinced herself she was better off without him. Now, watching Emma sleep, she wondered what might have been different if he'd stayed. If she'd tried harder to find him. If she hadn't been so afraid of being abandoned again. The next morning, they drove into town for breakfast. Copper Ridge looked like something from a Western movie. Main Street lined with storefronts, mountains rising in the distance, pickup trucks and motorcycles parked at diagonal angles. The Desert Rose Diner occupied a corner lot, its neon sign promising best coffee in Nevada. Inside, conversations stopped when they entered. Sarah felt every eye follow them to a booth by the window, heard the whispered words, "That's Tank's girl. Looks just like him. Wonder if she's staying." The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying brown hair, approached with coffee. "You're Sarah Rodriguez. I'm Betty Morrison, Jake's wife. Tank used to come in here every morning. Coffee black, wheat toast. Talked about you constantly." "I didn't know he existed until a week ago," Sarah said quietly. Betty's expression softened. "He knew that. Regretted it every day. Said your mother made him promise to stay away, that you deserved better than a biker who'd drag you down." Emma looked up from her coloring menu. "What's a biker?" "Someone who rides motorcycles, sweetie," Betty explained. "Your grandpa had a beautiful Harley. Silver and black, chrome that shone like diamonds. Can I see it?" Betty glanced at Sarah. "It's probably still at the garage. Marcus would know." After breakfast, they reluctantly returned to Rodriguez Cycles. Marcus was in the back bay, bent over a Kawasaki engine, his concentration complete. Sarah found herself staring at the way his t-shirt pulled across his shoulders, the play of muscles in his forearms. "Find everything you needed in town?" He didn't look up from his work. "We had breakfast. People seem to think I should stick around. What do you think?" The simple question carried so much weight. Sarah watched Emma exploring the shop, her daughter's usual tablet-absorbed demeanor replaced by genuine curiosity as she examined tools and parts. "I think this isn't my world. Emma and I have a life in Los Angeles. I have responsibilities." Marcus finally straightened, turning to face her. Same old Sarah, always running toward the next thing instead of dealing with what's right in front of her. "That's rich, coming from the guy who disappeared without a word." "I had reasons, I'm sure you did." Sarah's voice was ice. "Just like you have reasons for working in my father's shop instead of getting a real job." Something dangerous flashed in Marcus's eyes. "Careful, princess. You don't know anything about my life or the choices I've made. Then enlighten me. What happened to the Marcus who was going to college on a scholarship, who was going to design bridges and change the world?" "Life happened." He grabbed a wrench from the workbench. "Sometimes the world changes you first." Before Sarah could respond, the front door chimed and 3 men walked in. They wore leather vests over jeans and boots, patches covering the backs of their jackets. The center patch read Iron Wolves MC with a snarling wolf head beneath the words. Marcus tensed, his body language shifting to something harder, more alert. "Brothers, The lead man was tall and lean, with salt and pepper hair and scars across his knuckles. His eyes were cold as they assessed Sarah and Emma. Marcus heard Tank's daughter finally showed up. Derek. Marcus moved slightly, positioning himself between the bikers and Emma. Sarah, Emma, meet Derek Stone. He's the president of the Iron Wolves. Sarah's mind raced. Iron Wolves MC, motorcycle club. These weren't just guys who rode bikes for fun, this was something else entirely. Miss Rodriguez. Derek's smile was all sharp edges. Your father was a good man. Shame you never got to know him. Thank you. Sarah's lawyer instincts kicked in, recognizing a threat wrapped in politeness. I'm just here to settle his affairs. Of course, business is business. Derek's gaze shifted to Marcus. We need to talk. Club business. Marcus nodded curtly. Give me 5 minutes. After the Iron Wolves left, Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. What the hell was that about? Are you in a motorcycle gang? Club. And yes. Marcus gently freed his arm. Your father was president of the Desert Kings. His territory bordered ours. There's been tension. Territory? Are you serious? Sarah's voice rose. What is this? West Side Story with motorcycles. Keep your voice down. Marcus glanced toward Emma, who was pretending to examine a carburetor while clearly listening. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. What aren't you telling me? Marcus ran a hand through his hair. The Desert Kings expect you to take Tank's place. Derek and the Iron Wolves see an opportunity with Tank gone. This shop sits right on the border between club territories. I'm not taking anyone's place. I'm selling this shop and going home. It's not that simple. It is for me. Sarah moved toward Emma. Come on, baby. We're leaving. But I want to see the silver motorcycle. Another time. Sarah was already herding Emma toward the door when Marcus caught her wrist. Sarah, wait. You need to understand, let go of me. Her voice was deadly quiet. Marcus released her immediately, but his eyes were desperate. Just be careful. Don't trust anyone too quickly, including me. That evening, Sarah called her assistant from the motel room, Emma asleep beside her. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the week. Maybe longer. Is everything okay? Sarah stared out the window at the desert landscape, bathed in moonlight. I honestly don't know. Sarah spent the next morning at Jake Morrison's law office, a modest building that doubled as the town's only legal practice. The elderly lawyer spread documents across his conference table while Emma played with a puzzle in the corner. Your father's will is straightforward, Jake explained. The shop, the house behind it, and his personal effects all go to you. But there are complications, such as, Jake pulled out a thick folder. Tank wasn't just a business owner, Sarah. He was the president of the Desert Kings MC for 15 years. That comes with responsibilities. I'm not joining a motorcycle gang. Club, Jake corrected gently. And normally, leadership doesn't pass to family members. But Tank made specific provisions. The Desert Kings have 30 days to either accept you as their leader or buy out your interest in everything, including the shop. Sarah stared at him. You're telling me I can't sell this place without their permission? It's more complex than that. The shop serves as neutral ground between the Desert Kings and Iron Wolves territories. Tank worked hard to establish that peace. Without it, Jake shrugged. Well, Copper Ridge could become a very dangerous place. This is insane. I'm a corporate lawyer with an 8-year-old daughter. I don't know the first thing about motorcycles or gang politics. Club politics, Jake corrected again. And you might be surprised what you know. Tank always said you got his stubborn streak and his sense of justice. That afternoon, Sarah found herself back at Rodriguez Cycles despite her better judgment. She'd told herself she needed to inventory the shop's assets. But truthfully, she was drawn back to Marcus like a moth to flame, dangerous and potentially destructive, but impossible to resist. She found him in the back office, hunched over ledgers and receipts. The space was cramped but organized, with photographs covering one wall, pictures of motorcycles, group shots of men in leather, and several of her father with various bikes. The books look good, Marcus said without looking up. Tank was meticulous about the business side. Jake says I can't sell without the club's permission. Jake's right. Marcus finally met her eyes. The Desert Kings own 40% of this shop. It was Tank's way of ensuring neutrality. Sarah sank into a chair across from the desk. This is crazy. I have a life, Marcus. A career. Emma starts 4th grade in 6 weeks. I know. His voice was soft. I remember how much you hated this town, how desperate you were to leave. And now I remember why. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing to the photograph wall. God, look at him. Was he happy, do you think, living this life? Marcus joined her at the wall, standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, different from the cheap drugstore brand he'd worn in high school, more mature but still distinctly him. He talked about you every day, wondered if you were happy, if you'd gotten married, if you had kids. Marcus paused. He would have loved Emma. Emma doesn't need another person who might disappear from her life. The words hung heavy between them, loaded with old hurt and fresh fear. Marcus turned to face her, his expression pained. Sarah, about what happened, don't. She stepped back. Whatever your reasons were, they don't matter now. We're different people. Are we? Marcus moved closer, and Sarah found herself trapped between him and the wall of photographs. Because standing here with you feels exactly the same as it did 16 years ago. For a moment, Sarah forgot how to breathe. Marcus's eyes were dark with the same intensity she remembered, the same hunger that had made her feel like the most important person in the world. Her body responded to his proximity despite her better judgment, heat pooling low in her stomach. Mommy? Emma's voice broke the spell. Sarah jerked away from Marcus, her cheeks burning as she found her daughter standing in the doorway. Hi, sweetie. I was just looking at pictures of Grandpa. Emma bounced over, seemingly oblivious to the tension. Marcus, can you show me how engines work? I want to understand what makes the motorcycles go. Emma, we shouldn't bother, it's fine. Marcus smiled at Emma, his expression gentling. Come on, kid. Let's start with the basics. Sarah watched him lead Emma to a partially disassembled engine, explaining pistons and cylinders in terms an 8-year-old could grasp. Emma listened with rapt attention, asking intelligent questions that made Marcus's smile widen. She's smart like her mom, he said, glancing at Sarah. She gets good grades. Sarah tried to keep her voice neutral, but something warm unfurled in her chest at his praise. They were interrupted by the sound of motorcycles pulling into the parking lot, multiple engines, too many to be casual customers. Through the window, Sarah saw men in leather vests dismounting from their bikes. The patches on their backs read Desert Kings MC. Marcus tensed. Emma, go sit in the office for a minute, okay? Maybe draw a picture or something. Is everything all right? Sarah asked. We're about to find out. The men who entered were a mixture of ages and backgrounds, but they all carried themselves with the same confident swagger. Their leader was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, not what Sarah had expected from a biker gang president. You must be Tank's daughter. He extended a hand. I'm Robert Hayes, vice president of the Desert Kings. We need to talk. Sarah shook his hand, noting the firm grip and calloused palms. I assume this is about the will. Among other things, Robert glanced around the shop, his expression thoughtful. Tank spoke about you often, said you had his fire and your mother's brains. I'm flattered, but I'm not interested in joining your organization. We figured as much. Robert smiled sadly. City life, successful career, daughter to raise. We understand, but we have a problem. Which is? Robert exchanged glances with Marcus, who nodded grimly. The Iron Wolves think Tank's death gives them an opening to expand their territory. Without a strong Desert King's presence here, they'll push until they own this whole stretch of desert. And that affects me how? This shop sits right in the middle of it all, Robert explained. If Derek Stone gets control of this place, he controls the main route between Vegas and Phoenix. That's worth a lot of money to the wrong people. Sarah felt the walls closing in. What exactly are you asking me to do? Give us 60 days instead of 30. Let us prove that we can protect this place, protect you and Emma, without involving you in club business. And if I say no? Robert's expression darkened. Then we buy you out at market value and hope for the best. But Sarah, he paused. Your father loved this town, these people. The Desert Kings aren't perfect, but we keep the real criminals out. Without us. He didn't need to finish. Sarah understood perfectly. She was being asked to choose between her safe life in Los Angeles and a dangerous game of territorial chess where her daughter could become a casualty. I need time to think, of course. Robert headed toward the door, then paused. Your father would have been proud of the woman you became, but he would have wanted you to fight for what's right too. After they left, Sarah slumped against the counter, overwhelmed. Emma emerged from the office, tablet in hand. Those men seem nice, Emma observed. Not scary like the other ones. Other ones? The ones with the wolf patches. They didn't smile. Marcus and Sarah exchanged worried glances. If Emma could sense the difference between the two groups, things were more serious than Sarah had realized. "Pack your things," Sarah told Emma. "We're going home." But even as she said it, Sarah knew it wasn't that simple. Somehow, in just 3 days, Copper Ridge had gotten under her skin, and walking away from Marcus again felt like ripping out a piece of her heart. Sarah made it as far as the Nevada-California border before she turned around. Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted by the emotional turmoil of the past few days, and in the silence of the desert highway, Sarah finally admitted the truth to herself. She was running again, just like she had at 17. But this time, she had more than just her own heart to consider. Emma deserved to know about her grandfather, about the legacy he'd left behind. And despite everything that had happened between them, Marcus deserved an explanation before Sarah disappeared from his life again. The sun was setting when they pulled back into the Rodriguez Cycles parking lot. The shop was closed, but Sarah could see light coming from the apartment above it, her father's apartment, which Jake had mentioned was part of the inheritance. Marcus answered her knock on the side door, his surprise evident. "I thought you'd left for good." "So did I," Sarah hefted Emma, who was still half asleep. "Can we come in? Emma needs to rest, and we need to talk." The apartment was small but comfortable, furnished with worn leather furniture and more photographs of motorcycles and club members. Marcus gently took Emma from Sarah's arms and settled her on the couch, covering her with a blanket he pulled from a closet. "She looks peaceful," he said softly. "She's been through a lot lately. The divorce was hard on her, and now all this." Sarah trailed off, realizing she'd just revealed more than she intended. Marcus's head snapped up. "You were married? For 5 years. David was a good man, but..." Sarah sank into a chair across from the couch. "But he wasn't you." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Marcus sat heavily in the chair across from her, his expression pained. "Sarah, I need to tell you why I left. It was 16 years ago, Marcus. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter now. It does matter, because it's happening again." Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "Your father came to see me the night before graduation. Said he'd been watching us, knew how I felt about you." Sarah's stomach clenched. "What did he say?" "That you deserved better than a kid from the wrong side of town with no prospects. That if I really loved you, I'd walk away and let you build the life you deserved." Marcus's voice was bitter. "He offered to pay for college, full ride, on the condition that I never contact you again, and you took it." The words were barely a whisper. "My mom was dying, Sarah. Cancer. The medical bills were crushing us, and college was the only way I was getting out of this place. Tank said if I stayed, I'd drag you down with me. That you'd end up pregnant and trapped in Copper Ridge like..." Marcus stopped abruptly. "Like your mother did." Sarah finished for him, the pieces finally clicking together. "That's why you never fought for scholarships, never applied to schools. You were taking care of her." Marcus nodded miserably. "Tank wasn't wrong. I had nothing to offer you back then. Hell, I'm not sure I have anything to offer you now. You had yourself," Sarah said fiercely. "That was enough. That was everything." Tears tracked down Marcus's cheeks. "I've regretted it every day since. When I heard you'd become this successful lawyer, married someone who could give you everything you deserved, I told myself I'd made the right choice. But seeing you again..." Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly under the starlit sky. "I was pregnant, Marcus. 2 months after you left, I found out I was carrying Emma." Marcus went very still. "Emma's mine?" "No." Sarah turned to face him. "Emma's father was someone I met in college. A rebound relationship that lasted exactly 1 night." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But for those first few weeks, before I took the test, I hoped she was yours. Even though you'd broken my heart, even though I was furious with you, part of me hoped I'd have something of you left." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all the years and words they'd lost. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I'm sorry. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know." Sarah wiped her eyes. "But sorry doesn't change anything. We can't go back. No, but we can go forward." Marcus stood slowly, as if afraid any sudden movement might send her running again. "I know you have a life in law. I know this is complicated and messy and probably impossible. But I love you, Sarah. I've loved you for 16 years, and I'm tired of pretending I don't." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of breaking glass came from downstairs. Marcus immediately moved to the window, cursing under his breath. What is it? 3 bikes in the parking lot. Iron wolves. Marcus was already moving toward a closet, pulling out what looked like a baseball bat. Stay here with Emma. Lock the door behind me. Marcus wait, but he was already gone, thundering down the stairs. Sarah heard the sound of the shop door opening, then raised voices. She crept to the window and saw Marcus facing off with Derek Stone and 2 other Iron Wolves members. Told you once, Chen. The girl leaves town, or things get complicated. She's not hurting anyone, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite being outnumbered. She's Tank's blood. That makes her Desert Kings, whether she wants it or not. And Desert Kings aren't welcome in our territory anymore. Sarah watched Derek pull something from his jacket, not a gun, but something metallic that caught the light. A knife, maybe, or brass knuckles. Her lawyer's mind cataloged it as evidence, even as her heart hammered with fear. That's when Emma woke up. Mommy, what's happening? Sarah spun around, trying to keep her voice calm. Just some people talking outside, baby. Everything's fine. But Emma was already at the window, and her sharp intake of breath told Sarah she'd seen too much. Are they going to hurt Marcus? The simple question crystallized everything for Sarah. This wasn't just about her anymore, or even about Marcus. Emma had already started caring about him, about this place, about the grandfather she'd never known. And Sarah would be damned if she'd let her daughter watch another important person get hurt because of choices Sarah was too afraid to make. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, then pulled Emma away from the window. Listen to me, baby. I need you to stay here and count to 100. Can you do that? Mommy, you're scaring me. I know, sweetheart, but I need to go help Marcus. Count to 100, then call this number. She showed Emma the phone, where she'd pulled up Robert Hayes' contact information from the business cards Jake had given her. Tell him Sarah needs help at the shop. Can you remember that? Emma nodded solemnly, and Sarah felt a fierce pride in her daughter's courage. Then she grabbed the baseball bat Marcus had left behind and headed for the stairs. Sarah had never hit anyone in her life, but as she stepped out of Rodriguez's cycles with the baseball bat in her hands, she discovered a reservoir of fierce protectiveness she didn't know existed. Gentlemen, she called out, her voice carrying the authority she'd perfected in courtrooms. Is there a problem here? Derek Stone and his companions turned toward her, surprise flickering across their faces. Marcus shot her a look that mixed admiration with terror. Sarah, get back inside, Marcus said urgently. I don't think so. Sarah moved to stand beside him, acutely aware of how the bat felt in her grip. Mr. Stone, isn't it? I believe you're trespassing on my property. Derek laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Your property? Princess, you've been in town for 3 days. This is bigger than property lines. Actually, it's not. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing the recording app she'd activated. This is a legal matter now. You've damaged my property, made threats against my associate, and created a disturbance on private land. That's enough for vandalism, harassment, and trespassing charges. You think the law means anything out here? Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Tank understood how things work. Maybe you need a lesson. The sound of motorcycle engines filled the air, multiple bikes approaching fast. Sarah's heart hammered, wondering if more Iron Wolves were arriving, but Marcus relaxed slightly beside her. Sounds like the lesson's about to start, Marcus murmured. 5 motorcycles roared into the parking lot, their headlights cutting through the desert darkness. Robert Hayes and 4 other Desert Kings dismounted, their movements casual but purposeful. Sarah noticed how they positioned themselves to cut off the Iron Wolves' exit routes without appearing aggressive. Derek, Robert's greeting was polite. Ice. Bit far from your usual territory, aren't you? Just having a friendly conversation with Tank's daughter. Didn't look particularly friendly from where I was standing. Robert's gaze took in the broken shop window and Sarah's defensive stance. Maybe it's time you headed home. This isn't over, Derek said, his eyes locked on Sarah. Princess here thinks she can waltz in and change how things work, but reality has a way of catching up. As the Iron Wolves mounted their bikes and roared off into the night, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. Emma appeared in the upstairs window, and Sarah waved to show her everything was okay. Thank you, she told Robert. Emma called you? Smart kid. Robert studied the broken window, his expression grim. This escalates things. Derek's making his move faster than we expected. What kind of move? Robert and Marcus exchanged glances. The kind that puts innocent people in danger, Marcus said quietly. An hour later, after the police had filed their report and a temporary board had been placed over the broken window, Sarah sat in the apartment with Robert and Marcus while Emma slept on the couch. I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with, Sarah said. No more half-truths or protective silence. If my daughter and I are in danger, I need to know why. Robert nodded approvingly. Fair enough. The Iron Wolves aren't just a motorcycle club anymore. Over the past 5 years, they've gotten involved in drug trafficking, running product between Mexico and Vegas. Tank worked hard to keep them out of this stretch of desert. And now that he's gone, Derek sees an opportunity. This shop sits on the main route he wants to control. If he can force the Desert Kings out of the area entirely, he owns a crucial piece of territory. Sarah leaned back in her chair, processing. What about the police? Can't they handle drug trafficking? Hard to prove. And Derek's got connections. Your father kept detailed records of suspicious activity, but Robert hesitated. But what? Marcus answered grimly. Tank's records disappeared from his house the night he died. Someone got there before the paramedics. Sarah felt cold all over. Are you saying he didn't die of natural causes? Heart attack, according to the coroner. But Tank was in good health, and the timing was convenient for Derek's expansion plans. Robert's expression was grave. We can't prove anything, but we have suspicions. The weight of it all settled on Sarah's shoulders. Her father might have been murdered. Derek Stone was involved in drug trafficking. Emma was in danger simply because of her bloodline. I could take Emma and disappear, Sarah said quietly. Change our names, move somewhere Derek Stone will never find us. You could, Robert agreed, but running won't stop Derek. He'll push into Desert King's territory either way, and people will get hurt. Tank believed in protecting this community, even when it cost him everything. Tank also abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and daughter, Sarah pointed out bitterly. Yeah, he did. Robert's honesty surprised her. He made mistakes, big ones, but he spent the rest of his life trying to make up for them, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. That's the legacy he left you, not just this shop, but the responsibility that comes with it. Sarah looked at Emma sleeping peacefully on the couch, then at Marcus, who was watching her with an expression of quiet support. Whatever choice she made, he'd stand by her. She could see it in his eyes. If I stay, if I try to help, what would that actually look like? I'm not joining a motorcycle club. You don't have to, Robert said. But you could be what Tank was, a neutral party who keeps the peace, someone both sides respect. You've got legal training, connections, resources the rest of us don't have. And if I can't do it? If I'm not strong enough? Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense. Sarah, you raised a daughter on your own while building a career. You've been strong your whole life. You just never had to use it like this. Outside, the desert wind whispered across the red rocks, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. Sarah thought about her father, the man she'd never known who'd spent 30 years regretting his choices. She thought about Emma, who deserved to grow up knowing her heritage, the good and the bad. Most of all, she thought about the 17-year-old girl who Edie once dreamed of adventure before life taught her to play it safe. 60 days, she said finally. I'll give you 60 days to prove this can work. But I do things my way, legally, carefully, with Emma's safety as the top priority. Robert smiled and extended his hand. Deal. As they shook hands, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, not quite peace, but a sense of rightness she hadn't experienced since she was 17 years old and fearless. She was done running. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the renovated Rodriguez Cycles, watching Emma help Marcus adjust the carburetor on a vintage Harley. The shop had been transformed, still clearly a motorcycle garage, but now with a small legal office in the back corner where Sarah could handle the business side of things. The changes went deeper than cosmetics. Sarah had convinced 3 other shop owners on the main strip to form a business association, creating a united front against outside pressure. She also worked with Robert Hayes to establish a formal mediation process between the Desert Kings and other groups, replacing volatile confrontations with structured negotiations. It hadn't been easy. Derek Stone had tested their resolve twice more, once with an attempted break-in that was thwarted by the security cameras Sarah had installed, and once with a frivolous lawsuit that Sarah had dismantled in court with ruthless precision. But gradually, word had spread that Tank Rodriguez's daughter was not someone to underestimate. Mom, look, Emma called out proudly. I fixed the thing that makes the engine breathe. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Sarah smiled, still marveling at how naturally Emma had adapted to their new life. Her daughter had enrolled at Copper Ridge Elementary and made friends with the kind of small-town ease that only children seem to possess. Marcus straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. She's got good instincts. Natural mechanical aptitude. She gets that from her grandfather, Sarah said, studying the photograph of Tank that now hung prominently behind the cash register. Over the months, she'd learned more about her father through the stories people shared. Tank Rodriguez had been complicated, sometimes harsh, always protective, fiercely loyal to those he considered family. He'd made mistakes, but he'd also kept dangerous elements out of Copper Ridge for 15 years. Sarah? Marcus's voice was hesitant. There's something I wanted to ask you. Before he could continue, the door chimed and Robert Hayes entered with a woman Sarah hadn't met, tall, blonde, wearing designer jeans and boots that looked expensive but practical. Sarah, I'd like you to meet my daughter, Jessica. She just moved back from Denver. Jessica Hayes had her father's intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. I've heard a lot about you. Dad says you've accomplished more in 3 months than most people do in 3 years. I had good teachers. Sarah glanced at Robert, who'd become something like a mentor in the complex world of motorcycle club politics. Jessica's a CPA, Robert continued. She's thinking about opening a practice here in town. I thought maybe you could talk about the business association idea. As Jessica and Robert discussed the logistics of small-town entrepreneurship, Marcus drew Sarah aside. Walk with me? He asked. They stepped outside into the desert evening, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink that still took Sarah's breath away. Emma was visible through the window, completely absorbed in examining motorcycle parts. I love watching her discover new things, Marcus said softly. She reminds me of you at that age, curious about everything, fearless. I wasn't fearless. I was terrified most of the time. Could have fooled me. Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her. Sarah, these past few months, being here with you and Emma, working together, building something good, it's been the best time of my life. Sarah's pulse quickened. They'd been careful around each other, professional, focused on establishing stability for Emma and security for the community. But the attraction between them had never dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger as she'd watched Marcus interact with her daughter. Seen his patience and kindness, witnessed his fierce protectiveness when Derek Stone's men had tried to intimidate local business owners. Marcus, let me finish. His voice was urgent. I know this is complicated. I know you've been hurt before, and I know Emma has to be your priority. But I love you, Sarah. I've loved you since we were 17, and I want to build a life with you. Here, in Copper Ridge, with Emma. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. What are you asking me? Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm asking you to marry me, not because of the past, not because of guilt or unfinished business, but because of who we are right now. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Because I want to help you raise Emma and maybe give her a brother or sister someday. Sarah stared at the ring box, emotions swirling through her chest. Marcus, I know it's crazy, he continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. I know we've only been back in each other's lives for 3 months, but Sarah, when you know, you know. And I know that what we have is real and worth fighting for. Through the shop window, Sarah could see Emma showing Jessica Hayes how to use a socket wrench, her daughter's face bright with enthusiasm. This place, these people, this life, it felt right in a way Los Angeles never had. Open it, she said softly. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he opened the box. Inside was a simple but elegant diamond ring, flanked by 2 smaller stones that caught the desert light. The center diamond was your grandmother's, Marcus explained. Tank gave it to me before he died, said if I ever got the courage to ask you properly, I should use it. The side stones are new, I had them added. One for you, one for Emma. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Even in death, her father had been looking out for her happiness. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Marcus. Yes to all of it. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma's face appeared pressed against the shop window, her eyes wide with excitement. She'd clearly been watching the entire proposal. Does this mean Marcus is going to be my stepdad? Emma called through the glass. Sarah laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. If that's okay with you. Emma's whoop of joy could probably be heard in the next county. 6 months later, Sarah Rodriguez Chen stood in the desert behind the shop, wearing a simple white dress and boots, surrounded by an unlikely mix of family and friends. Robert Hayes walked her down the aisle, with Jessica as her maid of honor and Emma as the proudest flower girl in Nevada. The Desert Kings formed an honor guard on one side of the ceremony, their leather and chrome polished to perfection. On the other side sat Sarah's colleagues from Los Angeles, looking somewhat shell-shocked but genuinely happy for her. As Marcus slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Sarah realized that coming home hadn't been about returning to a place, it had been about finally becoming the person she was meant to be. The reception was held in the shop itself, with the motorcycles pushed aside to make room for dancing. Emma fell asleep in Robert's arms around 10 o'clock, and Sarah carried her daughter upstairs to the apartment that would soon house their expanded family. "Happy?" Marcus asked, finding Sarah on the small balcony overlooking the desert. "Terrified," Sarah admitted, "but yes, happy. Happier than I ever thought possible." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together watching the stars appear in the vast desert sky. "I love you, Mrs. Chen." "I love you too, Mr. Chen." Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were always territorial disputes to mediate, business decisions to make, a community to protect. But tonight, Sarah was exactly where she belonged, home at last, with the man she never stopped loving, and the daughter who was her heart, walking around outside her body. The desert wind whispered around them, carrying the scent of sage and new beginnings, and Sarah smiled. She was finally, completely, wonderfully home. The end.